All right, so welcome to part two of effective networking. But since we have lots of no's here, we are going to cover part one and part two today. I am Johnny Modi. I'll be your host today. I've spent the last 2 decades building enterprise platforms and resilient teams, both founding businesses as well as helping grow multi-million dollar businesses at VMware. So we have David Spiegel here. He holds an MBA from Kellogg with focus on entrepreneurship, finance, and marketing, and a BS from Indiana's Kelley School of Business. He has spent last 15 years in product leadership at public ad tech companies and agencies. For past 6 months, he has taught weekly networking sessions to top product management job seekers at Product Career Accelerator. So last session, David focused on high-level principles of networking. We will cover that a little bit again. And today we are going to get hands-on with specifics, mainly about how to better leverage LinkedIn and how to manage the complexity of networking. So David, over to you.
Thank you, Johnny, for the introduction. I went ahead and I put a link to the deck that I'm going to present from in the chat. If people want to jump around, that's fine. And before I forget, now you have it. And we'll put it again at the end or send it out as well. So I held a session last time and I had about 45 minutes to present. I have like 55 slides because I keep adding more and more details to what I'm presenting. And I went over what I call the four M's of networking magic. So the reason I use magic is because I have a connection to magicians, and I won't go into detail about my life story, but to me, magic is discovering the secrets and then practicing them to mastery, and then you can be a magician too. And so with networking, it's the same way. There are some secrets that you can either learn the hard way or learn from someone else and then practice them. And so that's what I've kind of broken it down into is the four M's: mindset, methods, messaging, and management. A lot of people, when they start networking, they just don't have the right mindset. So they think it's cringe. You have to reach out to people and beg for stuff, and it's awkward. And, how do I do it correctly? Thank you. Um, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Then that's what I spent a reasonable amount of time last time. So I don't want to spend too much time there. The methods I kind of glossed over in terms of what to do on LinkedIn. That's what I want to focus a lot of today's session on. Messaging. Most people, when they do the messaging, uh, they say too much and ask for too much upfront before establishing the relationship. So I give scripts for warm and cold outreach, especially cold outreach, and then management. If you're looking for a job in particular, and that's where this networking is focused right now, although it does apply to other types of networking, if you're looking for a job and you're doing applications, there's kind of just like one application per role. But if you're doing networking, you could be networking with 5 to 10 people per role, or at least per company. And then there's back and forth on that more so than an application. So managing all of that starts to get really stressful. So that's the summary of what I'm going to cover, just so that set expectations. And I'm going to jump around a little bit because I wasn't expecting everybody to have not been at the previous session. But I'm also going to make the assumption that people who did attend the previous session are going to watch this recording. So I don't want to like repeat too much stuff, but I also don't want everybody on the call today to like jump right in and not know what we're talking about. So going through here, I'm going to skip my background. You can watch the other session for that and skip the wins and come into the mindset over here. Um, the important piece about mindset is that before you start networking, you should get yourself in order. And to do that, you need to be clear on your goals and your identity. Like, are you looking for a job? Who are you? Like, what are you showing people? And what are you highlighting? And what type of job are you focused on? Um, Figure out who's helping who. You want to help each other. Conquer the what ifs. And don't worry about like if you're further along in your career and you still haven't done networking. There's a lot of cold networking that you can do, and this setup is important. So Talked about getting your goals, like make company lists, and that'll come in handy later. Your identity, there's a slide here for like getting your identity nailed because you need that for your messaging. If you don't know what your identity is that you want to present in your networking, then when you start messaging people, you're going to be all over the place. So get this down first, and then you can use that in the messaging. It builds on it. Um, let's see. Examples of success, the what ifs. Um, for the mindset, like I'm going to just kind of gloss over some of this. In general, my messaging is going to show you how to start relationships in a way that's mutually beneficial instead of just saying, like, hey, I see you work here. Can I have a referral? Like, we both know so and so. Can I have a referral? That's what I'm saying to not do. And so the mindset is, how can you help each other? And also, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, just reach out, and if people ignore you, so what? And maybe they'll come back later. And then the key thing that I think about networking is like your networking, your outreach is a gift to others. And think to yourself that you are helping them by reaching out first. So if we all agree that networking is valuable and works and is important, then we could also all agree that if you do the outreach first, then you're helping someone else because they get the benefit of meeting someone new, you, without having to do any work, as long as you're doing it in a way that's valuable to both sides and you're not just like doing outreach to ask for something selfish like a referral right away. So that's the key mentality shift. Like for me at least, like I didn't want to reach out to people because I didn't know how to help them and I didn't know how to not just ask for something, but finally I figured it out. And that's it. I have some good stories about my family and, encouragement and examples, but I'm going to jump into the methods. So, say you got all that down, and I took a lot longer when I did this first time. Then you need to figure out how to use LinkedIn. And one of the things that people I've noticed are not very good at is LinkedIn search because it's actually pretty complicated. LinkedIn search is definitely not Google search, and it's certainly not ChatGPT, although ChatGPT doesn't come back with what you might want it to in this use case. But you can use LinkedIn to establish your first degree connections. My rule of thumb, and it's on a different slide somewhere, is that you should have 100 first degree connections per year of work experience. So, example, if you've been working for 10 years, you should have at least 1,000 connections. 15 years, 1,500 connections. If you only have 400 or 500 connections and you've been working for a while, or after school, you only have 400 or 500 connections, then it's going to be very difficult to get second degree connections and your network is going to be small. You're not going to find people. So go out and build your first degrees. And there's cold outreach ways to do that as well. Um, oh, here's the benchmark right there. There are some ways to do that. I'm not going to go through the offline stuff, but I will do this one. Do your daily outreach in buckets. So reconnect. So reach out and do what I call naked connection requests, where you just hit connect. Um, with no message. Reconnect and keep in touch with your first degree connections. So send your first degree connections messages. We'll talk through those. Um, or reconnect is like reach out to your first degree connections. Do the naked connection requests. Chris, good. Thank you. I see you've added 120 connections in the first presentation. Awesome. And that'll come in handy. The personalized invitations to your ICP. So, find people, and I'll show you how to find them, who would be good people to connect, and write them a personalized note. And in the messaging section that we're going to get to, I show some of those. And then when you do the naked connection requests, if the people accept them, then you can choose to message them, and I'll show you where to go to find that list. And then you can send a little bit better message because you'll have more than 300 characters. There's a post that describes this. So let me skip ahead a little bit. This is a story about why I think you should do the just hit connect and see who accepts before you write a message to every person. If you write a message to every person and you have a 30% acceptance rate, then you're writing 7 messages that are ignored. And so for me, I'd rather just hit connect, 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 and have a good profile and a good headline that's relevant to that person. And then if they like it, they'll connect. All I've done is hit connect. And then they look at my profile or my headline and they hit accept. And then I can message the people who want to connect with me and want to hear from me. And my response rate is much higher. And I save a lot of time. We're not going to go through this offline type stuff because it's um, not really the methods piece. But if you want that, you can go back to it or look at the first session. Okay, so LinkedIn search. This is like one of the areas that I want to dive in the deepest because a lot of people don't know a lot about this. So for LinkedIn search, I'm going to go to LinkedIn
I
and
have a
give you an
question,
example.
David. Could people do live with you?
Can people do? I'm going to ask some questions. Like I'll do some examples and see what I can find.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Well, I guess, I mean, if it's just following the steps, like I opened up my LinkedIn to just kind
Yeah.
of mimic what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, let's do both. So if you want to open LinkedIn and use your own examples of what I'm about to do, go ahead. But I'm also going to ask for audience participation at this point. Um, we're going to look at my connections. It'll be a little bit different than you doing it yourself. But like what I'm going to say is like somebody give me a name of a company and a role that they would be interested in learning more about and networking to find out about that role. It's like if you know somebody's hiring, I'll pick one if nobody says anything in a couple of minutes, but I want to see if somebody comes up with something that maybe I didn't think of.
I bet we should have a lot.
Blue
Okay.
Origin Chief Engineer. Let's keep it. Is it okay if we keep it product? Just because we're product managers? I can do this one if nobody else has.
You're looking for a title and a company?
Yeah, like a product role that somebody would be interested in. Um,
Like director of product management?
Perfect for like at a particular company. So like I know like Instacart is hiring, for example, or
Yeah.
OpenAI. Everybody's very
Yeah,
excited
let's do
to
that.
do which one?
OpenAI, that'd be fun.
All right, let's do OpenAI. So here's what I would do. Let's say, hey, I wonder if OpenAI is hiring for product managers. Everybody knows you can search in jobs, right? So you can go to jobs, describe the job you want. You can search for OpenAI, or you could just go to OpenAI. Here, actually, let me do this. You click in If you click in here, one thing that people don't know is that in the search bar, if you just press enter without doing anything else, it brings this up and it allows you to search like different things. And I'll use this later for posts. But I could go to companies and then search for companies. And then there's these all filters, which are very helpful. So I'm going to search for OpenAI. So here's the company. And you can see their jobs. We all should know this. They have 321 job openings, but not all of these job openings necessarily have the people listed in terms of who the hiring manager is or who the recruiter is. So say you come over here and you want this job. It tells you who you can reach. LinkedIn will tell you who you can reach out to, but it doesn't necessarily tell you who the recruiter is, who the hiring manager is, or who you could talk to do anything other than just send your application into a black hole. And that's what I like to try to like improve upon. So I'm going to take this chat GPT core as a keyword in my mind, and I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'll come back to that. And I do a lot with multiple tabs because that's how I'm able to keep track of everything. So I'll open up a new tab. We'll go to LinkedIn. We'll go to my network, connections, and then search with filters. I could have done the click into here and do it this way, but let's just see, like first, I want to see if I know anybody in my first degree connections who works at OpenAI. So that's the first thing I would do. Okay, I know one person who does not work in product and another person who appears to be an investor. Probably not going to help me very much, but it's always worth a shot. OpenAI is kind of the long shot. If you would have picked like Google or like some of the Fang, Mango, whatever, then I would probably know some people. But okay, so we don't know very many people. Could go into second degree, see who knows who, right? So now in my second degree, there's going to be 280 people. So the other thing that I like to talk about when I teach networking is you want to be effective, like you want to have the tools to get the answer you want, but you also want to be very efficient. So what I would do here is then I would start using filters. So if I know 280 people, I'm not going to look at all these people. I'm not going to click 28 times here. So if I'm looking for the hiring manager or the recruiter, I'm going to go into all filters and I'm going to add keywords at the very bottom down here. So in the title, we're only going to look for product people. So their title has to have product and we'll show results. Then what happens is I've got 30 people to look through. And I already know from doing this a bunch of times that of these 30 people, a number of them aren't going to be helpful. So 3 pages of profiles to look through, I can totally do that. And here's what I do next. I I go through and I open each one in a new tab. But I also just realized I forgot something. A lot of people don't use the actively hiring when they're searching. Many product hiring managers and recruiters also don't use actively hiring, but there's a couple of other things that we could do. So I'm kind of jumping around because I'm taking you through my thought process, but here would be the stages that I would do if I want to find the hiring manager for this role, Chat GPT Core. I would first come over here. So we're looking for anybody in OpenAI. I'm going to reset this because I realized I skipped a step. Anybody at OpenAI actively hiring for any job title, show results. In my first and second degree, I'll open up the third degree as well. So these are the only people that are listing that they're actively hiring. Engineering, storage, head of applied research, go-to-market leadership, but it's in Japan. Um, I don't know what this is in Geneva. And so in this case, I don't think people want to put actively hiring at OpenAI because they know they're going to get flooded. But this would be the first thing that I would do. I would put um, actively hiring, and then you can open up these people's profiles just as an example, and you can see the roles that they're hiring for. And then you could show the job. And this is very helpful to find the hiring managers because sometimes it won't be listed in the job section, but it will be listed here. And so that's the first thing I do is I use this actively hiring. But let me reset that and show the results because that didn't work. So a lot of times it's dead ends. And then I'm gonna take off third degree because I only want to see first and seconds. And we're gonna do all filters and add that product piece back in. Title, product, show results. And so here's what I do. Once I've got this list open and I see that it's small, then I also know that you kind of have to be a product leader to be hiring. So I look for product people who have some sort of leader level title in their headline. But since this list is pretty small, we can go ahead and open that up and just look at whoever's mainly in product. So we'll look at product CPO. That's probably good. He might be reposting stuff and he has a lot of followers. VP of product. It's product policy, but maybe she's reposting stuff. Product marketing, I'm going to say no. Product design, no. Growth product manager, yes. Product partnerships, international growth, no. Then the other reason that I open the profiles up in other tabs is because I can keep my search in one place and see the profiles in another tab. Builds new products, maybe product leader, okay. Um, This says Amazon product marketing. So this is what I do. I just go through product OpenAI. Okay. Um, business partner, designer, product finance, marketing. Okay. So now we're kind of getting to like the less relevant searches. Okay. But so now we have these people. By opening their profiles in a new tab, instead of just looking them in the search, now they can see that I've viewed their profile. And some people look at that, and it's important. So I don't know that they're going to be caring so much that I'm looking at their profile. But again, if you've got a good headline, like if you've done AI stuff, and that's why you're looking at OpenAI, and Saguna sees that I looked at her, then maybe she's going to look at my profile, and if I see that she does that, then I'll message her. In that case, I can look at her activity. It looks like she hasn't posted. So a lot of times what we'll see is that people post and they repost roles. So even if they're not the hiring manager, they'll repost the role, and then that gives me a reason to message them. So now what I do is I go through real quick. Not helpful on her profile. And then the other thing you can do is go through and look at more profiles for you. So this is a weird thing. I don't think that we saw Brit in the search. So that's why I'm kind of going through this a little bit slowly and tediously, but it's like these are the tips that you can only see when you do it. If I go back here to this search, look what I asked for. First and second degree people who work at OpenAI and have product in their title. Let's look and see if we see Brit. I don't see him here. I don't see him here. And I know he wasn't on this page. However, when we go to Siguna, product, second degree at OpenAI, what the heck, LinkedIn? Like, why do you do that? If anybody else is seeing what I'm seeing, give me a thumbs up in the chat. But like, why didn't Brit show up in the exact search that he meets every criteria? But so what I do is I make sure that I look over here after I do the search, when I look at each person's profile, and then I open up those people too and look at them. Does that make sense? How many of you follow up and someone accepts your invite or sees your profile? What's your follow-up action? Some privacy settings, right? Like I don't want to show up in search, but LinkedIn will surface you in the more profiles for you. I don't know what it is, right? I don't know, but it's weird, and this is what we have to do. So, because like Kevin showed up, but Britt didn't. Anyway, so let's go look at Britt. Um, head of product, Chat GPT Enterprise. He has a very high probability of being the hiring manager for this role. What was the role over here? No, the role was here. Product manager, Chat GPT Core. That's the role. And then we found Britt through that little trick that I showed you. He's the head of product, Chat GPT Enterprise. So even if he's not the hiring manager for that role, and here you can even see like he's posting these, well, this is 4 weeks ago, so that's not super helpful, but this is the kind of stuff you look for. Um, I would message him and I would say something like, um, hey, where'd the role go? I saw this role. It looks like you work in that group, and I would find something else in common. Um, in this case, like I haven't worked at any of the companies that he's worked at or like known anybody at these companies, so can't do like a company thing. Um, but maybe there's like some common connections. I could reach out to maybe some of these connections. Like I've networked with Adam Fishman pretty well, so I could like maybe reach out to Adam. Hey, can you introduce me to Britt? Then I would go that route, get a warm introduction. Otherwise, I would cold message and I would use this messaging. It's going to open up the templates, which I have over here. So like a functional peer would say, hey, Britt, we have many common connections. And I would find something like specific of those common connections. I'm seeking a new role in product management. and noticed, and in this case, I would say like I noticed that OpenAI is hiring within ChatGPT and you're on that team. So this is the research, right? The be curious and doing the research. Like you found their profile because you saw the role and you saw that they are probably in the same team. So you've done your homework. You've said why, you said, hey, there's something in common. Hey, you have an ask, and you did your homework, you did the research, you're presenting yourself to them. And then I would say, would you be open to answering a few questions here? And I use the word here, so it's very easy for them to say yes to. I'm not asking them to jump on a call. I'm not asking them to jump through hoops. I'm just saying, hey, if you look at my profile, you can tell that I'm probably a fit for this role, and I'm doing my homework to see if it would be a good thing. Britt himself may not answer me, but if I do that for 5 to 7 people at OpenAI, someone will, almost guaranteed. I'm gonna pause here because I just went through like a whole bunch of stuff. Um, Kristen, I think that you were the one who like encouraged me to do OpenAI. So, like, what do people think so far? Am I telling you stuff you know, or is this new? Do you have any questions?
No questions so far. I appreciate the text that you have here as an example. I get messages like this a lot too. What's the expectation there? I always feel guilty that I'm not replying to other people. A lot of times people say, I see an open role at Paylocity. Can you help me out? And I get them a lot. So, what's your recommendation there?
That's a great question. And I do talk about taking inbounds, particularly from recruiters, but you make a good point that I don't have anything in my deck. Not that you would have known because whatever, but like I don't have anything in my slides or anything about taking inbounds. And so my philosophy on taking inbounds is that every connection you have is a potential benefit to you. And so there's a few ways that those messages could come in. They could come in through an in-mail. Generally, the emails that I see, I read them and they're crap. I can explain, but only if you ask me to. So most emails I ignore. If somebody sends me a personalized note in a new connection request that looks like this or something like it, where it's very clear, very direct, the reason, like the reasonableness of them asking is valid. Like if some designer or like some fresh college grad where like they're asking about roles that have 10 years of experience. Like if there's a huge mismatch, then I'm going to say they didn't do their homework. But if they've generally done their homework and they send me a good message like this, then I'll say something like, sure, I'd be happy to answer a few quick questions here. That way I connect with them. That way I do something nice and I will not let it take more than 10 minutes of my time. Like whatever questions they send next, I'll either direct them to the right person, I'll answer some questions about the company or the how product management works at my company or the team. Yeah, they're working on that, or they're like I wouldn't necessarily like send them to the hiring manager unless I know the hiring manager has already posted about it. But basically, I'll spend 5, 10 minutes because you never know when that person is then going to be connected to you and they can go back and look through the messages and maybe you reach out to them for something. Does that help, Kristen?
Yeah, it does. And what were you going to say about recruiters?
The thing about recruiters is that I always, always, always get back to recruiters within the same day because you never know like how being polite to a recruiter is going to help you later. If you've ever been laid off unexpectedly and need to all of a sudden network with a bunch of recruiters, it's always nicer when you can go into your LinkedIn messages and the last message was you responding back to them quickly and they'll know it. Like they
Is
recruiter, that's their like elephant memory of who helped them and who didn't.
would saying the automatic no thanks be an acceptable reply within 24 hours?
Yeah, I try to do it polite, like a little bit more politely than just no thanks. Like I would just say like, hey, I'm really happy in my role right now. Like, is there
Hmm.
anything particular that I could help you with if I'm not, on the market?
Okay.
But usually what I do is I just take a 15-minute call. Hey, you want to tell me a little bit more about the role? I might know somebody. Because if the recruiter is coming to you, then maybe there is somebody in your network that you know. And I've helped people that way where it's just kind of like trading insider information. And the people that I've helped that way, when I talk about my super connectors a few slides back, like I helped somebody get a job in the year 2000, yeah, the year 2000. And that person went on to be a very successful solopreneur in business development who knows everyone in technology. And he never forgot that. And he made he this year he's made like 10 introductions for me, 25 years later. So let's see. Alexander asked a question. Would you say connection request with a note is more effective than an email? I notice people answer email more often. I notice people answer email more often than follow or respond to a connection request even after confirming it. Interesting. Um, I have found that emails get ignored, and I've heard that anecdotally, and especially for people who post a lot on LinkedIn, almost all the emails are spammy type stuff. Like either they are literally spam or they're people who are going to pitch slap you like when you respond to them. So in most cases, I don't recommend InMail. I recommend either a blank connection request, a naked connection request, so that you use as little energy as possible to see if they're interested in talking with you, unless they're like some specific outreach that you're doing, like cold outreach. Then I would use the personalized note, very brief. It gives you 300 characters. You don't have to use all of them. And and then if you really want to reach them, you can use Contact Out or other tools and find their work email and send them a work email. But using the emails, like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like people don't like when you're using public identity information to reach out to them. So I I generally just use the connection requests, and then if it's like really important, I'll try a personalized note, but the it's not above 50%. So just know that you have to reach out to a few different people. Like in this case, like with the OpenAI, I would reach out to a few product managers, I would reach out to a few recruiters, I would even reach out to maybe like product designers or engineers in the group to try to find my way in to ask some questions and get some of that information about the organization, like who to reach out to.
Hey, David, I asked a question earlier to the group, but I haven't heard any inputs. I'd like to get your take on it with respect to, sending those naked connection requests. Now, how 10%, 20% is being accepted. Some even say that glad to connect or something like that. And then what's the typical? I'm guilty. I don't respond to that. I haven't taken any action, follow-up action past that. But I'm curious, like if you have some guidance on that.
Some guidance on
The
responding to
follow-up. When
inbounds.
somebody accepts the connection request, what's the next step?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go. Let's jump ahead. So I wanted to show this search, like a little bit of. Let me. I'm gonna come to that, and I'm gonna get to that in just a moment.
Sure.
I won't forget that. So, but I wanted to just kind of cover the search piece a little further. Um, what I would do here, another thing, like if I'm really focused on finding a role, then I would send some cold outreach to the people on the teams, like I just mentioned, to try to establish a relationship with people at that company and do insider research for the purpose of getting into an application queue without having to just apply. If you just apply, I have a slide for this. Just applying, Alex, who runs Product Career Accelerator, he says that if you apply within the first 3 hours, you're going to get noticed. I agree. That's your best odds. But then you also have to be like having your alerts set and like immediately applying to these roles that you desperately want the best. I would I would recommend going after certain companies and trying to build a network within that company by doing these types of searches and using the messaging outreach, like the one that I showed, and like the why I chose those sentences is also explained. Um, and I would try to establish some relationships. The other thing you can do is you can engage with um, I'm sorry. The other thing you can do aside from specific personalized notes is you can just hit connect on all these people. So that's like, and then see who says yes. So like with Saguna, like I would just send without a note, and I would do this a whole bunch of times. He does follow, but I mean, you can go. I'm following him now, but I would go to connect and send without a note. And the reason I'm showing you this, like even though I'm not necessarily wanting to find a role at OpenAI, I don't know that they hire remotely, is just like LinkedIn has changed from a very closed, like permissive type of a network, social network, to a more open one. And I think most people that think of LinkedIn don't think of it that way. So I think of this naked connection request almost as like following on Twitter. You can follow whoever you want. I can connect with whoever I want. And if they don't connect back with me, then I don't care. And that's it. And if I do that with 10, 15, 20 people at OpenAI, some of them will respond. And then, Johnny, I'll do this. So I have a bookmark folder for LinkedIn. I will go to my connections. Let me just open up in a new tab. So I'll go to LinkedIn, I'll go to connections, and then I'll see who recently added. And then I'll look at those people, whether they reached out to me with no message or whether I reached out to them and they accepted, then I will decide who I want to message. Because now I'm already connected to them. So say I reached out to a few people at OpenAI and these three people at OpenAI said yes, then I would message them. All right, hang on. I think there's a limit on how many connection requests with messages you can send unless you get premium. Vineet, good point. Everything I'm talking about here assumes that you do have premium because it's relatively inexpensive and it's one of the best things you can do for your career. I'm not a LinkedIn shill, but LinkedIn has doubled my salary. Like the amount that I've spent in my lifetime, I did a whole post on this. I've spent $5,000 since 2006 on LinkedIn. I guarantee you it has made me way, 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 way more than $5,000 since 2006. So
Yeah,
we can
agreed.
argue if you want to join or not, but I just say
Do it. Yeah, agreed. Thanks.
no problem. The one thing I will say, Vineet, is that I should probably have switched many decades ago to the annual plan. I'm still just paying the monthly and I'm not getting the discount.
I think you need to attend the financial planning class.
Yes, I do. I definitely do. We're all only so good in certain categories. So what I would do is like on a weekly basis is I would come back in and I would check my connections and then decide who to message. And then when I message these people, I think I reached out to him. It also tells you the date. So like, I mean, as you can see, I'm reaching out to people like free, like here's a great example. This is a good example. I don't even remember how I come across some of these people, but I was reading something and I found somebody that's a director of product at LinkedIn search. And as you've already heard me gripe, LinkedIn search is not the best. And so I just hit connect on Alice's profile and apparently she said okay. So then I would go back to her profile and I would message her. And I don't know what I would say to her because I'm not looking for a role at LinkedIn, but maybe I would just say, hey, thanks for connecting. In this case, like I have some thoughts on LinkedIn search. I teach networking. Would you like, and for her, I would say, would you want to get on a call? Or like, would you want to hear my thoughts? Or something like that. Because maybe she'll do it and then it'll make my life better. Right? Or maybe she'll be like, whoa, this is great. You've aggregated a bunch of feedback that's hard for me to get through user research. Like, do you want to participate in something with LinkedIn or do you want to talk to other people? Maybe there is a role at LinkedIn in Chicago. But that's what I would do. So like I don't know her. She has no reason to have said yes to me, but like she only has 5,000 connections. That's basically where I'm at. But she just said yes. So now I'm connected to her. So that's what I go through um, here and decide who I want to message. Let's see. Any other questions on that? It's a little bit interesting to do this talk today since I don't think anybody was at the previous session. So there were some questions that were in the previous session about like some of the details, but I don't have them like I don't have those people here to be like, "Oh, you talked about this on certain slides and can you get back into them?" So I'm kind of doing like the deep dive without covering the high level ground.
But I
Let
think
me
people should be following. It's pretty straightforward with respect to how the LinkedIn pages are. And I'm sure most
yeah,
of us spend sufficient amount of time on LinkedIn to be familiar enough. But yeah, I mean, to
I have a
everyone
couple of other
here,
tips. I have a
yeah,
couple of other tips that I wanted to get to. Let me see which, yeah.
please post your questions here. We want to make sure that this really addresses your core pain points with respect to networking, right? What is it that you want to get out of this call?
So I'm going to jump to a couple of other things on the LinkedIn methods. So we talked about search. We talked a very little bit about messaging. If people want me to spend more time on messaging, I will, but there's not so many like methods of LinkedIn to do it. It's just kind of like the philosophy of establishing the relationship first and having the message be very brief and one ask or one call to action per message. But that's for messaging. The other thing that's really great on LinkedIn now is the feed. But I think a lot of people just let LinkedIn give them the feed that LinkedIn wants to give them, and they don't use the feed very intentionally. So here's a few ways that you can intentionally improve your interaction with the feed. The first thing is build lists. Yes, LinkedIn does have the capability to turn on notifications, but let me show you what my notifications look like. They're awful. So if I go to notifications, I get all sorts of random stuff. So I get like the people that I follow all the time, I get their latest posts, but like this is the head of Pavilion, which is not product, it's just like a different networking group. This is somebody who does product marketing in Chicago. This is Elena Verna, product growth. This is the founder of Condo, which I'm going to talk about. Like, here's a post I was mentioned in. Like, here's a recruiter. It's just not like turning on all notifications for people gives you this notifications thing feed that's bad. It's just really bad, in my opinion. And so what I what I started doing is building my own lists. So Twitter has this, and TikTok has its own following feed, but Twitter X has lists, and I decided that I'm going to build my own lists, and I've posted about this, but let me show you what I mean. If I go here and I go to lists, here are all the people. Oh, only two of my lists here. Okay, well, whatever. I click on this, and it's 17 people, but it's just their posts in the latest order of the people that I want to follow. So if I click on this, it's these people, all of whom, in one way or another, post about product management, job seeking stuff. So, like Alex Krzyzewski, head of PCA, Ethan Evans, stuck at senior manager, Amazon exec, Colin Lernell, negotiations, Nancy Chu, interviewing, Satish, Ben, interviewing, Mark Baselga, Supra. You get the point. And so now I can just see their posts, which would be hidden to me if it was just in my feed or would be mixed in with everything else on the notifications. Another way to do this is um, I made one just for product led growth. So I'm very interested in the area of product that is PLG. I think these are some of the top PLG people. So I made a list just for that. So we'll go over here. I think there's even more people than who was listed there. Yeah, there's like 11 people. But then like here's Romilly's book launch. Um, or here's, wow, Elena's posting. Oh, this is top match and not latest. Let's do latest. Um, here's Adam Fishman. Like, I've been on my feed multiple times the past 4 hours. I have not seen this post, but now I will because it's in my list. And then the thing about that is then like it and maybe put a comment. And as somebody who is posting now, I recognize everyone that's interacting with my posts. And then if they reach out to me, I'm absolutely going to do them a solid and respond to them quickly. And so that's another thing that I recommend is that you can do that for companies too. So this is a list by topic. Another thing that you could do is you could do a list by let me find where I was. Oh yeah, I was on this one. You could do a list by company. So watch this. We were talking about OpenAI, right? So let's go back to OpenAI, click into search, hit enter, go to posts. So now you're just searching posts. So you get this post um, search options and go to all filters and do author company and add OpenAI. So now we'll only see posts from people who work at OpenAI. This is very helpful to find hiring managers and recruiters because if they don't put the actively hiring, they might still post about it. And that is something that happens a lot. Then you can find the hiring manager and contact them directly. And that is one of the best things that you can do to skip the application line. And to make this even a little bit better of a search, because this post was from 3 years ago, you can change it to latest, show results, and then you can also um, do like content type, job posts. So like 4 days ago, okay, there's not much on this one, which is sad, but you could do all filters and in their title, only look for product people. So just see the people at OpenAI that are in product that are posting about stuff. And then you can comment on their posts. My team is growing. 1 week ago, reach out if you're in these 3 cities and interested, PMs. She's telling you to reach out to her. Like I wouldn't have seen this post, even though it's in my second degree, like, and people that I know liked it and commented on it. Like I didn't see this post. But you could probably reach out directly to Kelly and um, send a message. Questions on this? Is this helpful? Like, is this something that people didn't know about? Because I hadn't thought about doing this until I started teaching networking, and some of this stuff has been available for a year or two now.
Yeah, this is really cool. This is also a great way to keep updated on your dream companies. I mean, it's not like you have a lot of time that you can continue research, but this way, it gives you the latest whenever you have time. So
That's right. And then the thing is, like, so say OpenAI is one of my dream companies, then I would just take this search right here and put it in my LinkedIn folder, in my LinkedIn lists, and I would call it like OpenAI product feed or list. And then I can come back to that specifically every once in a while because I'm in this folder often. And that way I know. Also, another thing that you can do now that I'm like getting back into here is that if you do all the connection requests and the people don't accept, you can still see if they viewed your profile. So like if you reached out to somebody, but they didn't connect with you, but then you could see if they checked you out, right? And then you could like here's a great example. Okay, this is a perfect example. I'm job searching right now. So this person is the hiring manager at a company that I would like to work at because they're headquartered 5 miles from my house and they're public company. Like I found them through the methods that I just told you, and I sent them a connection request and I sent them and so you can see they didn't accept it because he's still a third degree. I sent him a connection request with a personalized note and I sent him an email. And so he's looked at me, but he didn't respond to anything. But what I can do now is I can go back to my friend who works at this company and say, "Hey, I know Alex is looking at me, but he didn't respond. Can you reach out to him?" So some of it's like a little bit pestery, but some of it's like I'm doing my homework, I'm doing the legwork, and I'm using the tools that I have to find people and to interact with them in positive ways. We have 7 minutes left. I wanted to show one more thing in the deck, which is management. So we talked about um, we talked about lists, author company, commenting on posts. Don't just like them, like actually comment on them. You can view all the people who comment and connect with every one of them. You can view the people who react and connect with every one of them. A great example of this is there's this guy by the name of Brian O'Kelly, Bach. He's like a godfather of ad tech, has a ton of followers, and he's posting frequently. So now I check his posts out all the time and I'm like scouring his commenters and his likes. And I always comment on his post if I can think of anything like close and relevant to say, because his audience is literally all the ad tech executives. And so I'll go through his likes and I'll connect with every single person that liked one of his posts. And then some of them connect back and they're just like, "Hey, saw that you connected. Like, why were you reaching out?" And then I just tell them, "Oh, I saw you liked Brian O'Kelly's post. Like, we're both in ad tech. We should be connected." Like, that's it. And then I can come back to them later, like, and see them in my feed, that kind of stuff. So I do that. Let me go over to management here. So there's things you can do daily and things you can do like 1 to 2 times a week. Daily, go into your LinkedIn messaging. In LinkedIn messaging, I use a tool called Condo. It's basically superhuman for LinkedIn messages. LinkedIn messages usability is poor. No offense, LinkedIn, but it's true. So I'm just telling the truth. And Condo basically gives you a web version of a nice Gmail inbox with the ability to snooze and the ability to see like different messages like that you're waiting response, or you can use labels, you can folder things. And this is what I do is I'll put a reminder and say next week. So if I message somebody, they might not respond. But then if they don't respond and I've archived it, then I'll forget to follow up. And most people like don't like you shouldn't give up after your first outreach. I have got dozens of examples where I've coached people to follow up a second or third time, three total, outreaches to the person. And on the second message or on the third message, the person that they really want to like get a conversation going with will respond to them. And in fact, I've even got slides for that in the deck with Meta recruiters, with Google recruiters. It has worked for me and I teach it to other people. But I also have ADD, as Richard and I were talking at the beginning of this presentation, and I'll send the message and then I'll send it to 4 people in 1 week and then I'll forget who I was even supposed to follow up with. So now I send the message, then I set a reminder for next week, and their message comes back up to the top of my queue because I'm in here. This is now my inbox. So it just pulls it back up to the top. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, Jonas at Meta. I wrote him last week and he'd write me back. Hey, Jonas, let's try again." Boop. And then set another reminder. And that works. So if you want to use this link, you will get 1 month free. They changed it from a free trial to a you must pay up front. And if you don't like it, you can cancel. But if you use this link, you will get 1 free month, and I will also get a free month. So that's awesome. So use Condo. This is what I was just saying. Don't be a leaky bucket. Like, don't send a whole bunch of outreaches. You found the people. You sent a good message. You only send one. Your success rate's going to be like in the 10 to 20% range. If you just follow up with those people that, you saw it took me like 15, 20 minutes to find a bunch of people. If you just follow up with the people you already found, a second or third time, your response rate will probably go up to about 50%, if not higher. So that's a big one. And then when you are talking with people, this is kind of like tucked away and hidden over here. Always ask for other intros. Like if you're networking and they're networking and you're just trying to help each other, like just say, hey, who else can I talk to? I could see. Vineet, do you think it's beneficial to keep your visibility setting open for other LinkedIn users to see whether you have looked at their profile? I can imagine somebody's. I keep mine open and I post, and the amount of spam that I get is low, and so I think it's worth it. I'm on a call. Great to join the session. Start here, please connect. Yes, thank you for the, and these are also in the deck. I'm going to put a link to the deck one more time. If anybody wants to ask a question, I was, for the most part, keeping it open, but I'll pause here and see if anybody has any follow-up questions, and I can stay a little bit longer.
Hey, and let me share the feedback QR code.
Oh, yeah. Please take the survey and let me know. This one was a little bit weird because I was just kind of like hoping to follow up on what we talked about in the previous one. But since everybody was new, I kind of just like jumped into the deep dive. So you can give me that feedback. But let me know like feedback on the actual like the search techniques, the lists, the messaging, the follow up, that kind of stuff.
Hi, David. This is Hitesh. I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
From your experience, what's one or two things that holds people back? I think we all understand the benefit and the approach to it as you laid out as a mindset, which is it's all about building relationships and long-term relationships of mutual value, and that person who's reaching out is the one who's actually doing a favor to the person as part of building the relationship. I'm just curious, from your experience, what holds people back?
At the highest level, people think networking is selfish and they don't want to be selfish, so they don't do it. So the very first thing that I'm trying to teach people is that if you do a little bit of prep work on your profile and on your goal, then you finding the people that you will find based on those two things is going to be mutually beneficial if you just send short, sweet messages that are, positive to just establish a connection. Maybe nothing comes of it, but now you have a connection. Or maybe you have a connection and then you have a conversation either on LinkedIn messages or on a call and you see where it goes. And that's the biggest thing is that people don't realize how open others will be because others know networking is important too. So yeah, half the people that you contact are not going to respond. But if you contact 10 people, then 5 will. And now you've met 5 people and you can ignore the other 5 who didn't respond because that's them, whatever, and just work with the 5 who did, and it'll be enough. And so the biggest thing that I find is that people just are afraid to start because either they think it's going to be selfish or too much work. And so that's why a lot of what I'm trying to do is like give you techniques that you can save. So you do them once for yourself and then you can just come back to them easily. Messaging templates that you can reuse and just alter a little bit. And then management techniques like the condo reminders and those kind of things where it becomes very efficient. Like everything I'm telling you is how to be effective and get it to work, but it's only going to work so much. If it takes you 10 hours, you're not going to do it. So I try to get it to work in a very short amount of effort. So those are the main things. I think I told you 3 things. You asked for 1, but I told you 3.
Got it. Thanks, David. But I thought it's just one, which is just about not hesitating in kind of reaching out.
But you saw what I was doing. Like I found those
Yeah,
people
yeah.
at OpenAI. I'm just hitting connect. I don't care. The LinkedIn person, connect. Like, why not? What's going to happen? You're going to ignore me? Oh no. I've been ignored by worse in my life.
No, I really appreciate because I always took the LinkedIn connections as more of someone I know, someone I trust, and I just didn't like that. People are reaching out without really a purpose. I just don't want to have that connection. But I think what you're telling is, hey, it's more like a proxy of Twitter followers. It's just even the first level connection is not really a connection per se. It is just a network of influence, mutual influence, so to speak.
That's right. And one piece about that, and then Alexander, I see you got your hand up. One piece about that is that when you're reaching out to ask somebody in your first degree for an introduction or something like that, there's two ways to do it. You can just skip them. So like say, hey, I'm looking for Chani, and I noticed that we have Hitesh in common. Instead of me saying, hey, Hitesh, could you introduce me to Chani? I could just reach out to Chani and say like, hey, we both know Hitesh. The risk of that is that maybe, I don't know you that well, and maybe China doesn't know you that well, and therefore that's not a very strong opener. So what you can do is I could say, hey, Hitesh, how well do you know Chani? Do you know her well enough to make an introduction? So sometimes I start with that. So you could just not ask for introductions. Hey, we know people in common. Just go with it. Or you could ask your mutual connection how well they know them, and then go from there.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was actually my follow-up question. First of all, happy to see a fellow Chicagoan here. And second, that was actually like really about my question. Quite often I come across the situation when I reach out to people, everybody has like almost 1,000 or even more connections nowadays, and not all of them are actually like people who one can introduce to another. It's quite often, as you say, just people hit connect. I even had that a couple of times when people reached out to me and I realized that, yeah, this is just some random person. Like any sort of advice in such situation, for example, there is a person I do want to talk to. I see that I have a couple of connections. I figured out that they're all superficial in this sense. Just use this generic phrase of like, oh yeah, we have some common connections, or I don't know. Any other suggestion? Like what would you do?
The best suggestion is my screen still shared or no? I think it
No.
stopped sharing.
No.
Let me share again, and I'll show you a different messaging, a different message that I've sent that works well. Wait, hang on. I have stuff covering this up. Give me a second. So the one that I would suggest in that case is something like this. So to this executive recruiter, I wrote, "Hi Bobby, I noticed you worked at Frame.io." So he's an executive recruiter. He works at like True Search or True Partners or something like that. But he used to be in-house at Frame.io, which was, I mean, I'm not expecting you to know Frame.io, but like I recognized that company and I told him, and I also knew that company was like 3 screens down on his profile. So I'm indirectly telling him I looked at his whole profile, but I'm directly telling him, hey, Frame.io, that's a cool company. You worked there for 4 years until they got bought by Adobe. I'm not saying all that, but that's cool. I love that tool, and I have a patent on similar. I should have just said similar tech. I don't know why I said video scrubber marker tech, but whatever. I do. And so then that's what's in common. And then I'm looking to network with top product talent searchers. Let's connect. So like the adding value here is that he's a recruiter. Of course he wants to network. That's his job. So the value is I just showed up, right? But I could say something else, like I'm looking for a product leadership role. I'm looking to find out more about OpenAI, to understand whatever. I could just say something like why I'm doing it, and then that's it. And so the point I'm making is like if you've done your legwork, like people like to help those who help themselves. If you've done your legwork and you do have a connection, something in common, people like to have something in common, and your ask is super direct and simple. I'm looking to meet more product recruiters. Let's connect. There's my call to action. I put it in there. I say, let's connect here now because he immediately thought I wanted to get on a call. He responded to me in 5 minutes, by the way. Happy to have a call. Are you free tomorrow? That was his response. So my recommendation to you then is do something like that. Just skip the in common whatever and find some other commonality, or not. Just give them your reason. Hey, I found you because of this reason that could be valuable to both sides. Don't be like, hey, I found you because you're the hiring manager, because you work on this team. Will you refer me? Don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, don't, yeah, establish the connection first and then ask some questions, be curious, and that's in here too. Like it's in either 40 or 44. Do the research, find the things in common, add value, be curious about this stuff. And don't ask for a call, don't pitch slap, don't say why you're so great. Just get introduced. And then when you're curious and ask those questions, then it'll make sense when you want to ask for, oh, you do A, I did A. You're looking for B, I am B. Like you're whatever, I am whatever. Hey, could you do this thing? Looks like there's an amazing fit.
Right.
Any other follow-up questions on that or any other questions?
Well, as a follow-up question, I would just have that, how many times is it still sort of like polite to remind about yourself if people didn't respond to something? Again, I totally understand everyone's LinkedIn can be flooded, fair enough. But I always feel that, if a person didn't respond second time, like probably I
I'll show you
should have
what
done
not
something
to do.
better.
Here, I'll show you what not to do.
Yeah.
This guy right here. Don't do this, okay? I'm purposely ignoring this guy now. So he said, do you coach people in the US or do you work in other locations? I'm like, all right, whatever. I coach everywhere. He says, good to know. I don't want to pitch you, but would you be interested in something? Sure. Okay, but then I got busy, right? I had a family trip and I had a bunch of other stuff going on. So he sends me this thing. Fine. I was intrigued. I didn't get a chance to look at it. So he says this. Then he's like, did you see the video? Then he says, this is what being ghosted feels like. Then he says, brace yourself. Then he says this, like, and then he says this, like, dude, I'm after the first rude comment of being ghosted right here after 2 days, like, F you, man. That's it. So don't do that. What you should do is just say, like, hey, I know you're busy. Here's another fact to make you more intrigued. Would love to talk with you. Literally as few words as possible. Use ChatGPT to make it more polite and more short. And I've got slides in my deck, 2 examples of the exact words that I use to follow up that are probably too wordy, but they're short, and they worked. With Meta, it took 3 tries. With Google, it was after a year or 2, followed up again anyway. But my point is like 3 times max, and in your follow-ups, be very gracious and understanding, and you just want to send the reminder. And I've got examples in the deck as well, I think, or maybe it's my old deck, where people did it to me. Like I just got busy and they followed up. And like now I know this founder in Singapore because he just followed up 2 times.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we are 10 minutes past 1. If you guys have more questions, please reach out to David directly. This is a great way to increase your connections and multiply on that. With that, David, thank you so much. This has been hands-on exercise. I really appreciate it. I hope people have learned something and can apply. So send your feedback on how David can do better as well and how Sidebar can do better in terms of bringing the right kind of content that enhances your day. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank